The sky burned red above the ruined valley, streaked with fire from falling ships and the heavy smoke of war. Captain Elias Vera stood with his squad on the ridge, his rifle ready, his armor dented and scratched from countless battles. The land beneath his boots was scarred with craters. The soil turned black from the endless bombardments. The war had lasted for years now. Humans and the alien race known as the Zerakai fought over worlds that neither side wished to give up. The Zerakai were tall, scaled beings with sharp features and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They were proud, fierce, and merciless in battle. To most soldiers in the Terran Defense Force, the Zerakai were monsters, enemies to be destroyed. But Elias had never been one to see only an enemy. He had seen too much death to believe that killing was the only answer. Still he fought, because orders demanded it and because he wanted his people safe. "Captain," Sergeant Lyra called, crouched behind a pile of broken concrete. "Scanners show Zerakai movement ahead. They're trying to flank us." Elias nodded, tightening the strap of his helmet. "Hold the line. We can't let them through to the evac route." His squad was small. Barely 15 soldiers left after weeks of fighting on this desolate world. They were tired, hungry, and covered in dust, but their eyes still burned with determination. If they failed here, civilians evacuating in transports behind them would be slaughtered. Blaster fire erupted as Zerakai forces charged from the mist below. The air filled with shrieks and the crack of energy rifles. Elias barked orders, his voice steady even as the chaos of battle surrounded them. "Target the heavy gunners," he shouted. "Keep your heads low." The ridge shook with explosions, dirt flying into the air. The enemy advanced like shadows through smoke, their armor reflecting the glow of plasma. Elias fired, striking one Zerakai soldier, then ducked as a beam seared past his face. Minutes stretched into hours in battles like this. Time lost meaning. The only thing that mattered was survival, his squads and the civilians behind them. But then Elias heard something strange, a cry. Not the harsh roar of the Zerakai soldiers, not the scream of dying men, but the thin, trembling wail of a child. For a moment he thought his mind was tricking him. No child should be here, not in this wasteland of death. Yet the sound came again, clearer now, piercing through the storm of battle. Elias hesitated. His training told him to ignore it, to focus on the fight, but his heart refused. He gestured to Lyra to cover him and slid down the ridge, moving toward the broken ruins from where the cry echoed. The ruins were half-collapsed structures. Once homes or stations before war had turned them into rubble. Smoke drifted through the shattered beams, and there, under a fallen slab of stone, Elias saw a small figure, a Zerakai child. She was no older than 6 by human guess, her scales pale green, her eyes glowing with fear. She was trapped, her tiny arm pinned under debris. Tears streaked her face as she cried, not in rage, but in pure terror. Elias froze. He had seen children before, human children evacuated from colonies, crying for parents they would never see again. This child was no different. Enemy or not, she was innocent. The firefight raged behind him. Elias had seconds to decide. He threw down his rifle, wedged his hands under the stone slab, and heaved with all his strength. Muscles burned, armor plates scraped, but the slab shifted enough for the child to pull free. She stared up at him, trembling. Her language was alien, but fear was universal. Elias reached down and lifted her gently into his arms. "It's okay," he said softly, though she couldn't understand. "I've got you." Before he could move back to cover, the world erupted. A blast detonated nearby, the shockwave throwing dust and fire into the air. Instinct took over. Elias turned, wrapping his body around the child, shielding her as the explosion tore through the ruins. Shards of stone struck his armor. Sparks burned against his back, and the impact drove him to the ground. Pain seared across his side, but he did not let go. His arms locked around the child, protecting her fragile form with his own. When the smoke cleared, Elias coughed, tasting ash. His armor was scorched, but the child was alive, untouched beneath his shield. She clung to him wide-eyed, not understanding why a human soldier had saved her. "Captain!" Lyra's voice rang out as she and 2 soldiers rushed down to him. They stopped dead when they saw what he held. "By the stars," one whispered. That's a Zerakai." Elias stood, holding the child close. "She's just a kid," he said firmly. "We can't leave her here." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. To them, every Zerakai was the enemy, But Elias's tone left no room for argument. Lyra frowned, torn between duty and loyalty to her captain. "Sir, the squad won't like this. Command won't like this." "Command isn't here," Elias replied. "I am, and I say she comes with us until it's safe." The squad retreated toward the ridge, carrying their wounded and firing back at advancing Zarakai. The child buried her face against Elias's chest, trembling as the battlefield roared around them. When they finally reached cover, the soldiers huddled in disbelief. "Captain," one of them said, his voice sharp. "With respect, why save her?" "They wouldn't do the same for us," Elias met his eyes. "Because we're not them. Because if we stop protecting the innocent, then we've already lost." No one spoke after that. As night fell and the guns quieted for a few hours, Elias sat near the fire with the child wrapped in a blanket. She refused to leave his side, her glowing eyes fixed on him with a mix of fear and strange trust. He wondered what her parents were like. Were they searching for her now, frantic and desperate? Did they think humans had already killed her? Elias sighed, the weight of war pressing heavier on his shoulders than ever before. He had fought for years, killed without hesitation. Yet tonight he had done something different, something dangerous. He had protected the enemy's child with his own body, and though he did not know it yet, that single act would change everything. The night after the battle was cold. Smoke still rose from the ruined valley, glowing faintly under the pale moons. Captain Elias Vera sat awake near the dim campfire, watching the small Zarakai child sleep under a blanket beside him. His soldiers rested in a half-circle, weapons within reach, but no one truly slept. The war never allowed full rest. Elias's armor was burned in places, his shoulder bruised from the blast he had endured earlier. Yet his mind was heavier than his wounds. He had saved an enemy child, an act that made sense to his heart but not to the war. He knew rumors would spread. In war, everything spread. The child stirred in her sleep, whimpering softly. Elias placed a steady hand near her to calm her. She clutched the blanket tighter, her small claws scraping the fabric, but she relaxed. For a moment, Elias saw not an alien, not an enemy, but simply a child who wanted safety. Sergeant Lyra approached quietly, sitting across from him. Her dark hair was tied back, her face lined with exhaustion. She studied the child, then looked at Elias. "Sir," she said in a low voice, "the others are uneasy. They don't know what to make of this." "I know," Elias replied, his tone calm. "They think I lost my mind." Lyra shook her head. "Not lost, just different. Most would have left her. Some would have finished her off. You shielded her instead." Elias's gaze did not waver from the fire. She was crying. She was trapped. I couldn't walk past her. You risked your life for her, Lyra said, voice edged with disbelief and admiration mixed together. Elias finally looked at her. "Would you have wanted me to let her die?" Lyra hesitated. She was a soldier, hardened by years of fighting. Her family had been lost to the Zarakai in the early years of the war. Part of her wanted to say yes, to claim vengeance mattered more. But deep down she knew what Elias had done was right. "No," she admitted softly. "I wouldn't." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire and distant rumble of artillery somewhere beyond the hills. By morning, word had already reached the rest of the camp. Other human squads passing by stopped to stare when they saw the Zarakai child sitting near Elias, her large glowing eyes watching the soldiers with both fear and curiosity. Whispers spread quickly. Captain Vera saved one of them. Shielded her like she was his own. Maybe he's gone soft. Some soldiers respected his act quietly, though they did not say it aloud. Others spat on the ground, muttering that he had betrayed human blood. Elias ignored them. He focused on the mission, holding the ridge until evac was complete. The child stayed close to him, walking where he walked, hiding behind his cloak whenever humans glared at her. By noon, the call came from high command. A transport ship landed near the ridge, carrying supplies and new orders. The officer who stepped out, Commander Darren Hale, was a tall man with sharp eyes and a voice that cut like steel. He was not pleased. "Captain Vera," Hale barked, striding forward. His gaze landed on the child instantly. His lip curled in disgust. "What is the meaning of this?" Elias saluted firmly. "Sir, I found her trapped under rubble. I brought her to safety." "She's an enemy," Hale snapped. "You risked your squad's lives for that?" Elias's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. She's a child. Innocent. I would do the same for any child, human or Zarakai. The commander's eyes narrowed. Soldiers nearby held their breath, sensing the tension. You are a soldier, Captain, Hale said coldly, not a savior. Compassion for the enemy weakens us. Remember that. With respect, sir, Elias replied. Compassion is what keeps us human. For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Finally, Hale shook his head with disgust. Keep her until the next transfer, then hand her over. Command will decide what to do with her. Elias did not argue further. He simply nodded. But inside he knew Command's decision would not be kind. That night, while humans whispered against Elias, across the battlefield the Zarakai forces whispered too. The child had been returned briefly during a small exchange of fire prisoners, carried by Elias himself to the edge of the no-man's land. He had stepped forward with no weapon, the child clinging to him. He placed her down gently and stepped back, never raising his rifle. The Zarakai soldiers had expected a trick, yet the child ran to them unharmed, her small arms reaching for their embrace. The story spread like wildfire among the Zarakai ranks. A human soldier had saved a child. A human had shielded her with his own body. Perhaps humans were not all monsters after all. When the child was brought to her people, she spoke in broken words of how the human had lifted the stone and wrapped her in his arms when fire fell. Her voice carried far, for she was not just any child. She was the daughter of High Matriarch Saris, leader of the Zarakai Dominion. When Saris heard the tale, her fury was like a storm. At first she believed it was a lie, a trick by humans to mock her. But when she held her daughter and saw no wounds, only safety, her rage turned to confusion. Who? Saris demanded of her generals. What human dared touch my blood? The generals explained all they knew, that the human captain named Elias Vera had risked himself to protect her child, returning her without harm. Saris's sharp eyes narrowed. Why? No one could answer. To the Zarakai, mercy was weakness. They could not understand such an act. But Saris was not a fool. She knew war was filled with cruelty, and she had led her people with iron strength. Yet the idea that a human would protect her daughter rather than kill her gnawed at her mind. She rose from her throne, her scaled cloak shimmering in the light. Find him, she commanded. Bring me this human alive. I will see with my own eyes why he spared her. Back on the human side, the whispers grew louder. Some soldiers began to view Elias as a symbol of strange honor. Others saw him as reckless, a liability. Elias himself felt the weight of both sides pressing in. He had not saved the child for glory or politics. He had saved her because she was a child. Yet now his choice was shaping the war. Sergeant Lyra noticed his distant look as they prepared defenses. You know they'll come for you, she said. Elias gave her a faint smile. They'll come for all of us. No, she insisted. Not like this. You touched something bigger than orders, Captain. You touched hearts. That frightens people more than bullets. Elias said nothing, but deep down he knew she was right. Across the stars, High Matriarch Saris gazed out over the war map in her command chamber. Her daughter slept safely in the next room, alive because of a human. Her generals urged her to dismiss it, to treat it as meaningless. But Saris was not convinced. War is built on hatred, she murmured, her voice low, almost to herself. But if hatred cracks even by a sliver, it may break. She clenched her claws. This human, Elias, he is dangerous. Not because of his gun. Because of his mercy. Her decision was made. She would have him seized no matter the cost, and so, while humans whispered in distrust of their own captain, and Zarakai whispered in awe of an enemy's compassion, the shadows of fate drew tighter around Elias Vera. The war had not changed. The battle still raged. But one act of shielding a child had begun to turn the tides of hearts. And soon Elias would discover that saving a life was only the beginning. The war front shifted like sand under the wind. One day the humans pushed forward, the next they were forced back. Captain Elias Vera's squad had grown smaller again, worn down by constant fighting. Still they held their ground, though every battle took a piece of their strength. Elias carried the weight of whispers wherever he went. Some soldiers saluted him with quiet respect, others turned their faces away. Command had not punished him yet, but neither had they praised him. His act of saving the Zarakai child hung over him like a shadow, but on the other side of the battlefield his name was already known. High Matriarch Saris stood tall inside the war chamber of her flagship. The chamber was vast, with walls of black metal and banners of the Zerakai Dominion hanging high. Her armor glimmered, her crown of sharp bone reflecting light, but her eyes, golden and piercing, held more weight than any symbol of power. Her daughter sat nearby, drawing simple lines on a slate of glowing crystal. She was safe now, yet she often spoke of the human soldier. She described him with small words. He lifted, he carried, he covered. She touched her chest when she spoke, as if remembering the steady beat of his heart against her when he had shielded her. At first, Saris had raged, but the more she listened, the more her anger changed. This human had done something even her own warriors might not have done. He had risked his life for her child with no promise of reward. "Bring him to me," Saris ordered her generals again. "Alive. I must see what kind of human he is." Days later, the chance came. Elias and his squad were assigned to escort a convoy of supplies across the valley. The mission seemed simple, too simple. The humans expected only light resistance. But the Zerakai had been waiting. The attack came swift and sharp. Energy beams lit the sky, explosions shook the ground, and the convoy scattered in panic. Elias shouted orders, rallying his soldiers to defend the line. "Hold your positions. Protect the transports." The fight was fierce, but soon Elias sensed something strange. The Zerakai were not striking to kill. They pushed forward with precision, cutting off retreat paths surrounding the convoy instead of destroying it. "Captain," Lyra called out, firing from behind cover. "They're hurting us." Elias realized too late. The Zerakai wanted him alive. A heavy blast hit near his position, throwing him to the ground. His vision blurred as claws gripped his arms, pulling him up. His soldiers tried to fight back, but more Zerakai swarmed in. "Captain," Lyra screamed, but she was dragged away by the tide of battle. Elias struggled, but he was outnumbered. A sharp sting hit his neck, a stun dart. Darkness closed in as he fell unconscious. The last sound in his ears, the clash of battle fading behind him. When Elias awoke, the air was heavy and strange. The walls around him were curved, glowing faintly with alien patterns. He lay on a smooth surface, his weapons gone, his armor stripped. His wrists were bound by energy cuffs that glowed blue. He tried to sit, his muscles aching, but before he could move further, the door opened. Two tall Zerakai guards entered, their armor black as night. Between them walked a figure who radiated authority even before she spoke. High Matriarch Saris. Her presence filled the chamber. She moved with grace, her scaled cloak trailing behind her like living shadow. Her golden eyes locked on Elias with sharp intensity. "So," she said in a deep, commanding voice, "you are the human who touched my daughter." Elias stood slowly, despite the cuffs. His voice was calm. "I saved her. That is all." Saris circled him like a predator studying prey. "Why?" she demanded. "Why risk your life for the blood of your enemy?" Elias met her gaze without fear. "Because she was a child. Because innocence should not die for war." Saris's eyes narrowed. Her claws tapped against the hilt of her ceremonial blade. "You speak as if mercy is strength. Among my people, mercy is weakness." "Maybe that is why the war has no end," Elias replied quietly. "Because both sides have forgotten what mercy is." The guards stiffened at his boldness, but Saris raised her hand, stopping them. Her gaze lingered on Elias, unreadable. "You think yourself wise, human, but perhaps you are simply a fool." "Maybe," Elias admitted, "but I will not regret saving her." For days, Saris tested him. She questioned him about human beliefs, about loyalty, about why he fought. Elias answered honestly, never bending his words to please her. "You humans are invaders," she said one day, her voice sharp. "You step into our worlds, build your colonies, and call them yours. Do you not see why we fight?" "I see it," Elias replied. "And I see why you resist. But does that justify killing children? Burning cities? Turning every soul into an enemy?" Saris's lips curled in a half-snarl. "War demands blood. And peace demands courage," Elias said firmly. "More courage than war ever could." The words unsettled her. No prisoner had ever spoken to her like that. Not with defiance, not with conviction untouched by fear. In her private chamber, Saris spoke with her daughter. "Why do you remember him still?" She asked the child. "Because," the child answered softly, "he held me like you do. He did not let the fire touch me." Saris's heart shifted. She had seen humans as cruel, but this one, this Elias, was different. Dangerous, yes, but in a way that did not fit her understanding. The Zerakai generals grew restless. Matriarch, one hissed, bowing low. This human must be executed. Keeping him alive shows weakness. But Sarah silenced them with a glare. He saved my daughter when he could have let her die. He risked himself with no reason but his own honor. That is no weakness. That is power. The generals exchanged uneasy glances but obeyed. None dared defy her directly. Elias remained in his cell, but it was no longer a prison of cruelty. He was given food, water, even chances to walk under guard. The Zerakai child often visited, her small hands clutching the edge of the doorway, her eyes bright with curiosity. Elias would smile faintly at her, though words could not pass between them. Yet something deeper than words seemed to grow, an understanding, a bond. Saris watched this silently, her thoughts storming. Finally, one evening, she entered Elias's chamber without guards. The air was tense, the silence thick. "I have decided," she said at last. Elias stood, waiting. "You will not return to your people," Saris declared. "They waste your honor. They see your mercy as weakness, but I see it for what it is. You belong here with the Zerakai." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Belong? You mean as a prisoner?" "No," Saris said, her voice low but firm. "As one under my protection. I will not let you go back to those who will use you and discard you. You will remain here whether you agree or not." Elias's heart pounded. Her words were both command and strange invitation. She wanted to claim him, not to kill him, but to keep him. He met her gaze steadily. "I am a soldier of humanity. I will not betray them." "Perhaps," Saris said, stepping closer, her golden eyes burning. "But even the strongest walls crack with time. And you, Elias Vera, have already cracked mine." The chamber fell into silence, her words echoing like thunder in his chest. For the first time in his life, Elias realized he was no longer fighting just a war of guns and bombs. He was caught in something larger, a battle of hearts, of beliefs, of what it meant to be human, and what it meant to be seen as more than an enemy. And now, the alien mother claimed him as hers. The days passed slowly for Captain Elias Vera, inside the Zerakai stronghold. His cell no longer felt like a cage of stone and fire, but it was still not freedom. Guards followed him wherever he went, their golden eyes sharp with suspicion. The Zerakai child often came to see him, smiling shyly and offering small pieces of fruit or water. Elias never turned her away. High Matriarch Saris visited him often too. Sometimes she questioned him about human ways, sometimes she only studied him in silence. To Elias it felt less like a prison and more like a test. She was measuring his heart, his patience, his will. He answered her honestly each time. "Why do humans fight so hard for lands that are not theirs?" she asked one evening, her cloak sweeping across the chamber floor. "Because survival drives us," Elias replied. "We spread because our worlds cannot hold us. But survival should not mean crushing others beneath our boots. Too many forget that." Saris tilted her head, her eyes unreadable. "And you? Have you forgotten?" Elias shook his head. "No, that's why I saved your daughter." The words hung heavy. Saris turned away, but her silence told him she was thinking deeply. Not everyone agreed with her decision to keep him alive. In the council chamber, several generals argued with her openly. "This human sows weakness among our ranks," one said, striking the table with a clawed fist. The soldiers whisper his name. "They say he is honorable," another spat in disgust. "Honor, he is a deceiver. He acts kindly to soften us. Kill him and the whispers will end." But Saris stood tall, her voice sharp as steel. "If mercy is weakness, then why do his enemies call him reckless for showing it? If cruelty is strength, then why does it not end our war?" "No, he stays." Her generals bowed reluctantly, though their eyes glimmered with anger. Elias had become more than a prisoner. He was a symbol, and symbols were dangerous. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, the humans were restless too. News reached command that Captain Vera had been captured alive. Many assumed he was already dead. Others whispered darker things, that perhaps he had chosen to stay. Sergeant Lyra, who had fought beside him for years, refused to believe he would turn. She stood before the officers in the briefing hall, her voice steady. "Captain Vera would never betray us. He saved that child because it was right, not because he sides with them. We must bring him back." But the officers were divided. Some agreed, saying Elias was too valuable a leader to lose. Others muttered that his compassion had already made him a traitor. In the end, Command decided to launch a mission, not to rescue Elias out of trust, but to prevent the Zerakai from using him as a tool against humanity. Back inside the Zerakai city, Elias began to see more of their world. The guards escorted him through the great halls carved into mountains, past glowing crystal spires that lit the streets, past markets where families traded goods and children played. For the first time, Elias saw Zerakai outside of battle. They laughed, argued, and cared for one another much like humans did. They were not monsters, they were people. Different, yes, but people all the same. He remembered Ceres's words. "You belong here." Yet his heart pulled in two directions. His people needed him, but here he was beginning to understand the enemy in a way he never thought possible. One afternoon, the Zerakai child ran into the chamber where Elias sat. She tugged at his hand, speaking in her language. Though he could not understand the words, he understood the meaning. She wanted him to follow. The guards allowed it, and Elias walked with her to the high balconies that overlooked the vast city. From there he could see the stars above, the war front in the distance, and the busy life below. The child pointed at the stars, then at him, then at herself. She giggled, as if trying to say they were connected somehow. Elias smiled faintly. "If only your people and mine could see what you see," he murmured. Ceres joined them silently, her eyes following his gaze. "You are dangerous, Captain. Not for your strength, but for your vision. You see what others refuse to." Elias turned to her. "Dangerous or needed?" She did not answer. The pressure grew heavier. Zerakai generals pushed Ceres harder. "End him, or the soldiers will believe he has changed you." Human command prepared their strike. "Retrieve him, or kill him before the Zerakai use him." And in the middle stood Elias, trapped between two worlds, both suspicious of his choice to protect a child. The attack came sooner than expected. It was late at night when alarms shook the Zerakai stronghold. Human dropships cut through the sky, their cannons blazing. Explosions thundered as soldiers stormed the gates, determined to break inside. The Zerakai scrambled to defend, their generals barking orders. Ceres stood at the heart of the command chamber, her golden eyes flashing with fury. "Protect the child," she ordered, "and guard the human." Elias's guards rushed him toward safety, but he resisted. "No, I have to stop this. If they see me here, they'll think I've turned." The guards shoved him forward, but Ceres herself appeared, her cloak flowing. "You will not return to them," she said firmly. "They will not understand you now. They will fear you." "They're my people," Elias shot back. "I cannot abandon them." "They are not worthy of you," Ceres replied, her voice sharp with conviction. "Here at least you are valued." But before more words could pass, the walls shook as human soldiers breached the outer gates. Blaster fire roared, and the child screamed as the sound filled the chamber. Without thinking, Elias grabbed her and shielded her again, his body between her and the blasts. Ceres froze, watching him, her heart torn between pride and frustration. The humans stormed in. Among them was Sergeant Lyra, her rifle raised, her eyes widening when she saw Elias standing beside the matriarch, holding the Zerakai child protectively. "Captain," she cried, "we're here to get you out." Her squad aimed their weapons at Ceres, but Elias raised his voice. "Hold your fire! No one shoots." The soldiers hesitated, confused. Lyra stepped forward. "Sir, we don't have time. We have to leave now." "She's using you." Elias shook his head. "No, you don't understand. She only wants to protect her child, like we protect ours." The Zerakai guards raised their weapons, and the humans raised theirs in turn. The room trembled with the weight of violence ready to break. Ceres's golden eyes locked with Elias's. "Do you see? They will never trust you again. They come with guns, not with hearts." Elias looked at Lyra, then at the child in his arms, then back at Ceres. "And yet, if we never try to bridge the divide, the war will never end." The standoff stretched long and heavy. Soldiers on both sides waited for a signal to fire, and there in the center Elias realized the truth. He was no longer only a soldier of humanity. He was no longer only a prisoner of the Zerakai. He had become something else, a bridge neither side wanted to admit they needed. The humans pulled back after fierce fighting, unable to capture Elias but unwilling to destroy the stronghold with him inside. They retreated, leaving smoke and silence in their wake. Saris stood beside him in the aftermath, her expression unreadable. They will come again. They will not stop. Elias held the child, who clung to him tightly. His heart ached with the choice before him. He belonged to his people, yet they doubted him. He had found strange respect among the Zerakai, yet they wanted to claim him as their own. Two worlds pulled at him, and the war raged on. But Elias knew one thing for certain. The path ahead would not be chosen by orders or fear. It would be chosen by what was right, and the time to choose was coming soon. The night after the battle was heavy with smoke and silence. The human soldiers had pulled back, but their threat lingered like a shadow across the Zerakai city. Fires burned in the distance, lighting the skies with angry red. Captain Elias Vera stood on the high balcony, the alien child sleeping in his arms. He had protected her again, and in her small hands he felt the weight of both worlds pressing on him. Behind him, High Matriarch Saris entered quietly, her golden eyes catching the light of the flames. "You see now," she said softly. "Your people will not rest. They will come again, stronger. They will burn us until nothing remains." Elias turned his gaze toward the stars. "And your people will not stop either. They will fight back until the galaxy itself is filled with ash." Saris studied him. "Then where do you stand, human? With them or with us?" Elias's jaw tightened. "I stand where the child stands." Between both worlds, the Council of Zerakai met the next morning, their voices filled with fury. Generals slammed their fists on the stone table. "The humans will strike again. We must march first. We must crush their armies before they regroup." Others shouted, "The human prisoner is the cause of our hesitation. Remove him and the path will be clear." Saris silenced them with a single raised hand. "He is not a prisoner. He is proof that even in the heart of our enemy, there is one who can act with honor. His life stays under my protection." Murmurs filled the chamber, but no one dared challenge her openly. Still, Elias knew their patience was running thin. On the human side, the debates were just as heated. In the war camp, officers stood around a glowing map, their faces grim. "The Zerakai stronghold is weakened. If we strike again, we can break them." But Sergeant Lyra slammed her fist on the table. "And what of Captain Vera? He's still alive in there." The commander shook his head. "The man you knew is gone. He chose to stay with them. If we hesitate for his sake, we risk everything." Lyra's eyes burned with anger. "He didn't choose them. He chose to protect a child. And that's the man I'll follow any day." Her words silenced the room, but only for a moment. Orders were given. The humans would launch a final assault within days. Elias learned of it from Saris. She came to him late in the night, her cloak wrapped tightly around her. "Your people are coming again," she said. "This time they bring everything. Warships, machines, soldiers without number. They will not stop until the mountain itself falls." Elias felt his chest tighten. He looked at her, then at the child playing in the corner. "Then the mountain will not stand. Not unless we change what happens here." Saris frowned. "What do you mean?" Elias stepped forward, his voice firm. "Let me speak to them. Both sides prepare for death, but neither side truly wants it. If I can stand between them, maybe I can end this war before it burns us all." Her golden eyes narrowed. "You risk your life. They will not listen." "They will listen," Elias said, "because I will make them listen." For a long time, Saris was silent. Finally, she nodded. "Then you will have your chance. But if they fire, know this, I will not let them take you. If you fall with us." The day of the assault arrived. The human fleet descended from the skies like thunder, their engines shaking the heavens. Dropships poured down in waves, soldiers swarming across the scorched fields. From the mountains, the Zerakai met them with fire and steel, their warriors roaring in defiance. The battlefield turned into a storm of fire, smoke and cries in the midst of the chaos. Elias walked forward. He carried no weapon, only the determination burning in his eyes. At his side walked Saris, tall and proud, and behind them clung the child. Both armies paused at the sight. A human standing beside their enemy's matriarch, shielding her child, stepping calmly between two roaring tides of war. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. Sergeant Lyra was the first to break rank. She lowered her rifle and stepped out. "Captain Vera," she shouted above the smoke. "What are you doing?" Elias raised his voice so all could hear. I am standing where none of you dare stand, between hate and hope." The generals of both sides barked orders, but their soldiers hesitated. Too many eyes were fixed on him. Elias continued, his words sharp and clear. "How many more will you bury before you see the truth? You call yourselves strong, yet you fear mercy. You call yourselves brave, yet you fear trust. I saved a child because it was right. That is what strength is. That is what courage is. If you cannot see it, then perhaps you are the weak ones." Murmurs swept through the ranks. Some soldiers lowered their weapons. Others shifted uneasily. Sarah stepped forward then, her voice ringing like steel. "This human speaks truth. I am High Matriarch of the Zerakai, and I declare this child is not only mine. She is proof that even enemies can protect one another. If you would fire, then fire upon us all." The image was striking. A matriarch and a human captain standing shoulder to shoulder, with a child between them. The human commander snarled from the ridge, "Enough of this! Fire on them all!" But before his order could spread, Lyra shouted, "Stand down! That is your captain out there, the man who led us, who bled for us, who never once abandoned us. If he says there is another way, then I believe him. And so should you." The human soldiers wavered. Some aimed lower, some even dropped their rifles. On the Zerakai side, a general raised his weapon to strike Elias from behind. Cyrus's blade flashed, stopping him cold. "No more treachery," she hissed. "We will let the human speak." Elias lifted the child high, her small hands reaching toward both armies. "She does not know war," he said. "She knows only life. And life is the one thing we all share. If we keep fighting, she will inherit only ashes. But if we stop now, here today, she will inherit a future." His words carried across the field. Soldiers stared, torn between orders and the quiet truth pressing into their hearts. The silence stretched. Then slowly, like a chain breaking, rifles lowered. Cannons powered down. The sound of war faded into stillness. Both armies stood facing each other, not as monsters, not as enemies, but as people. The human commander shouted in rage, trying to rally his men. But no one followed. His voice was drowned beneath the quiet resolve of thousands who had chosen to stop. On the Zerakai side, the generals muttered in fury, but none dared defy Saris as she stood beside Elias, her hand on the child's shoulder. At last, Saris spoke. "Let this day be remembered. The day a human shielded what was not his, and in doing so, became more than either side expected. From this day we will seek peace, not because we are weak, but because we are wise." The war did not end in a single moment, but that day became its turning point. Talks began, armies withdrew, walls that had stood for generations began to crack. Elias did not return to his people as he once was. Many still doubted him, some even feared him, but others saw him for what he had become, a bridge. Among the Zerakai, he was not hailed as prisoner or foe, but as guardian. The child never left his side, her laughter proof that even in the darkest war, innocence could survive, and High Matriarch Saris, once ready to seize him as her own, now stood beside him as an equal, her respect for him carved deeper than stone. In the years that followed, peace grew slowly like a fragile tree. There were struggles, betrayals, and losses, but there was also hope. And at the heart of it, there was always the memory of one man who chose not to kill, but to shield, not to destroy, but to protect. He had stepped into fire not for glory, not for power, but for what was right. And in doing so, he gave both worlds a chance to rise from the ashes together. Captain Elias Vera had become more than a soldier. He had become a bridge of fire, and through him, two enemies found the first spark of peace.